So DC Comics is burning another one of its comic book distributors. They just started this comic book distributor. Why are they so angry at this comic book distributor? Why not just let the guy operate and try to help them? Well, the answer is because they don't feel like it. They really didn't give any good reason to, but they did just announce, and actually it was announced through UCS, that after the end of this year, after the end of 2020, they will no longer be able to distribute DC products to comic book stores. So DC Comics, why are you doing this? Why would DC Comics get this new distributor started up, have it distribute its comics, and then a few months later help it out during the pandemic, and then a few months later say, hey, you know what? We're just going to cut you off and just give it all to this other distributor we started, Lunar. Does it make business sense? Well, yes, it makes business sense to the extent that it's like, well, look, the comic book market is so insignificant to DC Comics now that they don't care what happens with these distributors. They don't care what store owners think. They don't care what anyone else in the industry thinks, and or anyone else that they're working with thinks. It's easiest for them to do it this way. They have one relationship to deal with rather than two. Not like two is so difficult, but one relationship. Not Diamond Comic Distributors that already distributes Marvel and IDW and Dark Horse and Image and so many other titles. They're going to just stick with this other guy. So, okay, that's what they're doing. This is the article. Before we get into the article, subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications if you want to support my work so you don't miss out when all these exciting things happen, such as DC Comics burning up one more of its distributors. So this is coming from ICV2.com, and this is run by Milton Greep. Milton has had his own problems with this. Milton used to run a company called Capital City Distribution. That was the second largest comic book distributor to Diamond Comic Distributors until Marvel did an exclusive with Diamond Comic Distributors, and then DC was about to go with Capital City Distributors, and then Diamond Comic Distributors stole it away from Capital Comic Distributors. Capital Comic Distributors tried to stay in business for a few more months, and they sort of did, but then they kind of just collapsed and went out of business. And then Milton started ICV2, which stands for Internal Correspondence. He's calling it Volume 2 because it used to be a trade publication available to industry comic book people. It was provided really for the stores, talking about business. So he started up this website years later, and now he kind of watches from the sidelines. But he knows what it's like to have DC Comics choose someone else to love. So this is coming from his website, no DCS through UCS. After EOY, and he's just trying to be clever, but he means end of year. And UCS is the comic distributor. DCS is obviously DC Comics. UCS Comic Distributors has informed its customers that it will no longer distribute DC products to retailers as of January 1st, 2021. It referred its customers to Lunar Distribution as a source for DCs in the future. And UCS was a division of Midtown Comics, which is a big comics retailer, and it's a big comics mail order business, and they had the chance to try to keep DC's business, and unfortunately DC said no, 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 no. UCS has been distributing DC products to comic stores since late April 2020 when DC resumed production of new comics while its primary distributor to comic stores, Diamond Comic Distributors, was shut down due to COVID. You can see the link to this. There are a few articles about it, but this generally covers it all pretty well. UCS tied to brick and mortar and e-commerce retailer Midtown Comics was division of. Was paired with Lunar Distribution, tied to brick and mortar e-comics retailer DCBS. For a time, DC split the North American territory between the two distributors along geographical lines. Eventually, retailers were allowed to buy from whichever distributor they preferred. Diamond resumed its distribution of new comics in late May, so for a while there was 3 distributors selling DC products to comic stores. That hadn't happened for more than 25 years, since the early 90s. But it was going again just for a little moment in time. DC ended its North American relationship with Diamond for new products on July 1st, which we still haven't heard the full story about. And we may never will. DC also opened the comic store channel to its book channel distributor, Penguin Random House for graphic novels. That meant the comic stores could get graphic novels from DC through Penguin Random House, and opened 2 new distributors, EE Distribution and Sideshow, as a distributor for its DC Direct statue figure and collectible line. ICV2, EIC, editor-in-chief. Well, he loves the letter strings, right? Milton Greep looked at that series of transitions in late July column. All right, so he's got his take on it. I used to do business with Capital City Distribution back in the day. They were all right. This puts some comic retailers in the position of having to make 2 distributor changes in DC for DCs in under a year, first from Diamond to UCS and soon from UCS to Lunar. It's unclear where DC is headed with these changes it's made in 2020. DC is just going off in its own direction. That DC could care less what happens at the comic book stores. It's unfortunate, but it's pretty clear. They don't even have an internal representative that deals with, they used to have a vice president. They don't have an internal executive at DC to deal with comic book stores. And the reason why they don't is because they do not want management strategizing and thinking about comic book stores. They're not trying to manage it. All they're doing is taking their comics and considering anybody that wants to print comics will now get them through this one distributor as periodicals. And there is some business for the book trade, so they'll sell through the book trade as well. But they're not going to be thinking about the comic book market per se. That just whatever they can sell to this mail order retailer, DCBS, which also owns and operates Lunar Distributors. In March, the company said it was exploring a multi-distributor model, which most took to mean that retailers could expect multiple options as suppliers. That would make sense, right? As of January 1st, that's true of all DC products except for periodical comics. It's almost like they're phasing out periodical comics. It is like that. For its part, UCS sounds like it's not done with the distribution business, telling retailers UCS is not closing. We'll be offering other exciting items that stores can use. Whatever that means. Other exciting items stores can use. A UCS spokesperson did not respond to questions about whether the period when it distributed DC Comics was planned as a short-term relationship, and if not, why the relationship was ending. The relationship is ending because DC Comics could care less. They don't really want to manage true relationships. They want this to not be a thing that anybody thinks about. That is why. Midtown did let us know they'll be buying comics from its retail business all through Lunar, like other comic retailers. So that's what's happening to them. They're also instituting some new minimum orders, which makes it a little bit harder to qualify to be a retail store. But, that's probably not a bad thing to do. The minimum is $500 a month of DC Comics retail to resell. But since comics are like, $4.99, $6.99, what would that be? Like 100 comics a month that they have to sell to qualify as a retail outlet? It just means like, look, just at least buy some quantity. But what that might mean is the people buying from Midtown, if they want an additional discount, maybe they can qualify. There are collectors that can qualify now as retailers practically. I don't know if that's 100% the case or not. If they require people to provide resale certificates, usually they do to give them the retailer discount. But you can get big discounts buying directly from DCBS anyway. So it's just the end of DC Comics taking comic book stores seriously as a distribution channel. And really, it's them walking away from periodicals as well, which everyone knows they're doing. It couldn't be much more obvious than this. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you think DC Comics really does care about doing periodical comics anymore? Do you think they're just kind of doing it for a while, but they're going to ultimately all be graphic novels? A lot of us do think that. But tell me what you think. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe if there's a management change, they might do something different. Tell me what you think. Also, if you want to check out my work, go to collegeofthedead.com. Pick up a copy of College of the Dead Graduation Day. It's my ongoing series about a zombie apocalypse that takes place on a college campus. It's pretty exciting. Some of the characters live, some of the characters die, some of the characters turn into the undead. Check it on out. Also, coming soon, epicmermaids.com will take you to The Mermaids. Yep, The Mermaids is an ongoing full-color series. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. I'm working out the details on the graphics now. As you can see, we're adding some of the graphics. They're not all complete yet. There's some other exciting perks I'm going to be adding to this, so it should be pretty damn cool. And again, it's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. It's really interesting. There are 30 plus mermaid characters in this. It's an entire little mermaid world universe I created with a team of some other really great people. So check it out. I'm sure you will love it. And I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.